Welcome to Zzeem's studio for another episode of the HPO podcast. I'm Erin Roberts, and I'm a partner at Zzeem, and today I'm interviewing Gerald Bramm, the principal at Bramm Research. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Zzeem is a consulting and association management agency, and it's a treat to have you join us. Today we're talking about the results of Bramm Research's recent survey of association executives on their approach to AI. This was done in collaboration with the Canadian Society of Association Executives in the spring of this year. So let me tell you a little bit about Gerald and Bramm Research. Bramm Research offers a range of research and analytical tools for organizations that target the needs of professional, business, and other vertical niche markets. Most of their work focuses on research projects conducted on behalf of associations with an emphasis on member satisfaction and member engagement surveys. Gerald Bramm has operated Bramm Research for more than 25 years. He's worked on hundreds of projects and has experience in all types of survey research, from large-scale online surveys to focus groups and individual interviews. Gerald holds his CAE designation, and he also holds the CAIP designation. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's the Certified Analytics and Insights Professional. Welcome, Gerald.
Thank you very much, Erin. Glad to be here.
Great to have you here. So now, what is an HPO? That's what this podcast is called, the HPO podcast. This podcast is part of the High Performance Membership Organization series, otherwise known as the HPO podcast. If you'd like to find out more about what an HPO is all about, just scan the QR code on the screen. Okay, so let's get right into this. Gerald, you did a short survey of our registrants for the podcast today,
Yes.
just to find out a couple of things about where they stand. What did you find out from that?
Sure. Yes. And thanks, Erin, again, and welcome everyone. Yeah, we did a short survey. Really, it was just to understand or give a little more context to our attendees today. And so we asked two very simple questions. First of all, your own personal experience um, with AI, and then a question related to your association's current standing or current use of AI. And really, it was, again, as I say, simply a way to kind of understand a bit more about our audience and where they're, so to speak, coming from. And I guess the key finding was that our audience today is very similar to our respondents who completed the AI survey in the spring of this year. In other words, we have a good a mix of folks who are just dipping their toe in the water, as it were, with their use of AI, all the way to those individuals and associations that are somewhat more experienced. So I think that the findings today will match very nicely with our audience of attendees, Erin. So that was
Excellent.
the key findings.
Well, let's start with a bit of background on the project. Gerald, what were you
Sure.
hoping to achieve?
Sure. So just to start at the beginning, as Erin said, this was a collaboration between Bramm Research and CSAE, Canadian Society of Association Executives. I approached CSAE at the beginning of the year and said, you know what, from my understanding, there's really no information out there that relates to the use of AI amongst Canadian associations. And I want to underline the fact that this is a survey done amongst Canadian associations. All that we had at that time was simply, or we were relying on information coming out of the US about AI usage. And so I thought it was very important, given everything that's going on, to get a snapshot of what's actually happening on the Canadian scene. So first and foremost, that was kind of goal number one. Um, the second objective was really we wanted to be able to give individual associations the ability to benchmark their activities. We wanted an association that would be looking at the information that we gathered to be able to say, gee, we're actually quite far ahead of where other Canadian associations are, or you know what, we're excuse me, we're kind of behind the wave here. We need to perhaps catch up a little bit in terms of our knowledge and use of AI. And I think the third major objective really was to understand, what are the concerns that associations have related to the use of AI? What are the challenges that they're facing? And what are some of the best practices out there amongst those associations that are perhaps, further advanced than others in terms of their use? What might they be able to tell the rest of us about, how to proceed into this undiscovered country? So that was basically it.
Well, it looks like your timing was perfect, and it'll be great to see how our use of it evolves over time. Where do you feel, based on the results that you've seen from your survey, Gerald, where are Canadian associations in terms of their adoption of AI?
Well, let me answer this in two ways, Erin. First of all, I do want to point out that we thought it was very important to get a read on use of AI amongst across the association,
Hmm,
as it were.
right.
Um, it was our sense, just kind of anecdotally talking to a variety of association executives, that there was quite a bit of usage happening amongst the staff, but not necessarily known by perhaps, senior executives at the association. So the executive director might not be fully apprised of all the, usage that was going on. So when we worked with CSAE, we felt it was very important to have the survey answered by all levels of staff, not just the executive director or the CEO, because, as I said, some of this usage may not be known. And, staff might be using AI, but may not be completely willing, perhaps, to, discuss with senior staff all the ways in which they're using it. So,
Right.
having said all that, we did ask across all levels of the association, what is your use of generative AI tools? And as you can see in this chart, we had 30%, about a third of respondents saying, I'm using AI on a regular basis. Use it frequently as part of my work or decision-making process. 40% saying occasional usage, and then roughly a third in total either using it infrequently or they have never used AI. So that gives you a read sort of across the association what the use of AI is. Then we followed that up with a question about where's your association at in terms of its just general usage. So the question related to, what stage is your association at in terms of AI usage? So this is, essentially kind of an adoption curve. This is that snapshot that we wanted to take of where are Canadian associations right now in terms of their use of AI. So reading this from sort of left to right, we've got 5% who are saying, AI is completely integrated into our organization at this point. Got 24% who are we're in an early adoption phase, we're experimenting. 28% saying we're exploring, we're discussing AI's potential within our organization. And then the largest group, the 37%, who are this is the informal usage by individuals within the staff. So this relates to the previous chart that we were just looking at. And then 5% who said, we're not considering AI at all at this moment. So that for our attendees, that kind of gives you a snapshot of where Canadian associations are nationally in terms of their use of AI. And this allows you to say, we're actually doing quite nicely in comparison, or, we're fairly far along in terms of our adoption or experimentation with AI.
Yeah, I noticed, Gerald, in the previous slide, so most associations are using AI at least occasionally. And
Mhm.
I'm curious, in the survey, did you get any information about the primary ways in which AI is being used within associations?
Sure. So, yeah, we asked a number of questions related to current use of AI tools, and we kind of broke this out by operationally and in terms of strategic initiatives. So, I'd have to say at this point, almost half of the associations that are using AI are using it to improve operational efficiencies.
Okay.
So this might be content creation, for example. I'm using AI to help me write the newsletter. I'm using AI to craft emails or blog posts, things of that nature. But it is not being used by very many associations into kind of a broader strategic set of initiatives. So it's, again, being used primarily to kind of make work go faster,
Hmm.
improve efficiencies, make content creation, for example, a little bit easier. But it has not kind of fallen down into or gone up into the kind of more strategic ways in which AI could be used to improve, for example, member engagement or member retention or member attraction. So we're kind of at that kind of very early stage of being able to kind of free up time for some staff related to, duties pertaining to uh, content and things of that nature.
I guess the obvious question now is, it's possible that associations would be further along with AI than they are right now if it wasn't for that whole poison chalice concept. What are the dangers? And did you ask about, any concerns that associations have?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was a kind of a dominant area of inquiry was related to concerns. And the chart I'm showing here are just, I'm showing the percentage of people who are very concerned about these elements. I mean, so we gave respondents an entire kind of laundry list of potential concerns. And right at the top of that list, you can see uncertainty about how AI tools handle sensitive member information. So, I mean, that's concern number one by kind of a long shot is data security. As an association, we collect a lot of information about our members, and the worry is that a tool like ChatGPT, or for example, you put this information out on ChatGPT, and then it's being used for training purposes or is simply out there in the world. And of course, that is a very legitimate worry that respondents to the survey had. Um, Lack of clarity around how AI aligns with certain legal requirements, the likelihood that AI could make incorrect or misleading recommendations, quality control over AI generated content, and concern about who owns AI created materials. I mean, we've all had, I think, experience just related to the kind of misleading or incorrect recommendations of AI hallucinations. Some of them are somewhat comical, but also very concerning that AI might suggest something and it could be just completely way off. But unless it's there's kind of human oversight, some of this misleading information or recommendations might kind of go out to our members or might go out into the world, and that is a very real concern. So unquestionably, Erin, there are a lot of very legitimate concerns about AI use at this time.
Gerald, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I had not thought, I mean, of all the things I have to worry about with
Mhm.
respect to AI, I had not thought about who owns AI created materials.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can you elaborate on that, or was that just a basic question?
Yeah, it was a fairly basic question. I mean, I think what might be in question there, for example, is using AI to create visual images.
Ah,
for example. And then, who owns that visual image that has been created by AI? Is that yours? Is it somehow, copywritten? Um, but I think beyond that, um, I know, for example, that there is a concern, Aaron, with let's say your association has hosted a conference and your conference speakers, the content of their presentations have been captured, or their slides are made available. Well, let's say, for example, you ask AI to summarize the content of someone's presentation. Um, Arguably that's still owned by the individual giving the presentation.
right.
But you could imagine that it might be used for other purposes. I mean, if it kind of goes into the grand knowledge base that the association assumes they own, there could be a conflict in a situation like that. So that might be another kind of example of how this could become
Yeah, it really the
questionable.
possibilities are endless, aren't they?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, let's then talk about, I know it's kind of hard when you don't know what the potential downside is of what looks like a pretty attractive tool. Um, the logical thing is to put together policies and guidelines, of course, but did your responders think that policies and guidelines are important? Are they doing it?
Hmm.
Where
Hmm.
are they in terms of putting the fence around the use of the tool?
Sure. So, in answer to your first question, absolutely. We asked respondents to rate the importance of establishing formal AI policies, and pretty resounding percentage of respondents said absolutely. It's very important that we have AI policies. This is essential for kind of responsible, excuse me, implementation of AI. And a further quarter, 23% said yes, absolutely. It's kind of somewhat important that policies should be, uh, or policies would be helpful, but not absolutely critical. But the number that I focused on was, again, almost two-thirds of the folks saying, yeah, it's very important that we have AI policies. So, but in terms of, do you have policies? Kind of an
How,
interesting,
how, how is that? How does 62% say
yeah,
policies are essential?
yeah.
And from this slide, I'm seeing only 14% actually have them.
Policies, yeah. Yeah, so 74% saying no, we do not have guidelines or policies. So yeah, this is quite an interesting finding I found, and I think it's in subsequent conversations, I think this is one area in particular amongst many that associations are um, struggling with is,
Yeah, I get it.
what do we how do we control this thing? What kind of guidelines or policies do we put in place? What might that look like? I mean, I have to think part of the explanation here for this great gap between, it's very important to have them, but we don't have them, is that they're kind of in the process of creating these guidelines. So, if we had of if we went back to these folks, I would think perhaps a number of them would say, well, actually, we're working on them. We don't actually have them, but we are working on them or thinking about them or what have you. But in people who've been exposed to this information and just in informal conversations, I think there's a lot of associations out there who again, as I say, we're struggling with this and are anxious to find out, well, how should we build these policies or guidelines? What should be, part and parcel of these guidelines and policies? So I got to think that's where a lot of Canadian associations are right now, is in the process of thinking through that. Um, because I agree, and it'll come up over the course of our conversation here, that establishing policies and guidelines, I agree with the respondents, is very important that these be in place before you go too far down the road with AI usage.
And maybe something to keep in mind is ideally we've got the ability to decide what our policy is going to be and hopefully take the time to do it right.
Yeah,
But one of the challenges that we've always got is um, are we going to be forced into it before we're actually ready to do it? And I'm just thinking of an organization that I know of, and they're very lucky that they've got literally a lineup of people to be at board meetings and committee meetings. They've got way more volunteers than they could ever ask for. But what they started to see happening was people would be sending their AI assistant to the committee meeting,
hmm
and in some cases, not even showing up themselves at all. So not only are there unauthorized recordings of the committee meetings going on out there, but the people that you had hoped to make a contribution to the committee have felt it was enough just to make a recording and listen to it later. So
right,
I just bring that up because I feel the same way. I don't know what to put in a policy and get it right. But at the same time, I feel that we could very quickly become in a situation where, and this organization literally had to come up with a policy overnight in order to deal with that issue.
right. Well, we did ask, this was a follow-up question for our respondents was what do you think should be in these policies and guidelines? And I thought this was interesting. If we could see the next slide. Okay, we've got it. Thank you. Um, so items that should be included in your guidelines and policies. And I'm just showing the very top items here. I mean, it's quite a long list that was presented to respondents. So we have kind of priorities being set, but number one is related to this, member data concern is that what member data can be collected, stored, or shared. And tied with that is ensuring that staff understand their responsibilities under these guidelines. So I think it's very crucial to hammer out, what are we going to actually collect and what might we upload to generative AI, and then make sure staff understand, what information we can upload and how we might use it. Thirdly, and I think this is very important, is just a list of approved tools that are safe
Yeah.
for staff to use. Because I mean, I think as we have come to experience, different tools have different policies about what material will ultimately go into training the model. And I think for kind of all of us, this is an important consideration that we need to know if we upload something to ChatGPT, for example, is it going to be used for training purposes? Might it be available to the outside world? How does all that work? Um, and I guess related to this to member data, kind of a similar type of consideration is information not to be uploaded, personal related documents, for example, personnel related documents, including resumes, etc. So that, again, those are just the top level items that folks feel should be included in guidelines and policies. But if you're looking for a place to start, if you're in that camp of folks who think, yeah, policies and guidelines are really important, but we don't have any, those would be a good starting place. So,
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, in addition to, where should you start with your policies? What other advice would you give associations based on what you got from the survey?
right. So, what I'm sharing with you now are actual quotes from respondents who took part in the survey. And this does afford me the opportunity to say, I am not an AI expert. So, what I've shared with you is all coming from respondents that we interviewed in the process of doing this survey. So this advice is not my advice, it's their advice. And, when we get into, if there are other kind of attendee questions, I hasten to say, uh, I don't pretend to be an expert on AI. I know a little bit about surveys and surveying people about AI, but I'll leave it at that. So, advice for those beginning their AI journey. This was kind of an open-ended question that we asked at the tail end of the survey. And I thought there was some good nuggets in here of advice, coming from respondents who were further along in the process of adoption. So, this reflects the whole conversation that we've been having about policies, putting policies in place before there's widespread adoption. I think having the board involved is very important to create kind of general policies. The idea of testing in different ways before adopting a full list of when to use AI. Tread carefully, learn everything you can about it before adopting it. I mean, that's pretty sound advice, I think.
I just, before we get on to the next question, there is a question in chat
Yeah.
about just about what we were talking about earlier, Gerald,
Mhm.
allowing AI note-taking applications. Should they be allowed? If so, what the guardrail should be, that kind of stuff. I think this raises, I agree with the questioner. Raises a whole host of things that I think are just too challenging to deal with. If you've got an AI note taker in there, it's not so much that it's AI, it's that there is an unauthorized recording of what's going on. So first of all, if you're even going to allow it, you would have to get the permission of everybody in every meeting, at every meeting, ahead of time, that they're okay having however many recordings of them out there.
Right.
You'd then have to accept the fact that the minutes are, while they might be the official version, there could be other versions out there. And then what happens if somebody takes the recording, manipulates it? It raises a whole host of challenges with it. And the organization I was talking about earlier immediately put into place a policy that said you can't have an AI note taking. Basically, you can't do a recording of a committee meeting or a board meeting that you're in.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point, and the other thing that I've noticed recently is I use a kind of AI assisted, right? Occasionally I will take a recording of a call where we're discussing a project. I will download that recording into a transcribing uh, device or model app. And the output is not only the verbatim transcript, but it's a summary of the meeting and what was the tone of the meeting like, and et cetera, et cetera. So I guess the point I want to make is that I could take that summary and use it quite liberally without even necessarily reading the summary. So I
Yeah.
mean, you're kind of putting a lot of faith into the AI that has created that summary, and it could be completely misguided unless
Yes.
there's some sort of human oversight to say, yes, indeed, that is an accurate summary of what transpired in that meeting. So I caution, building on your point, Erin, about being cautious in the use of note takers and summaries of meetings that might be created.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, Gerald, are there anything about the survey results that you find concerning or encouraging? What's the good news and the bad news here?
But just before I get to that question, Erin, if we could look at the next slide, because there was a little bit more advice
Oh yeah.
coming from our respondents that I wanted to highlight. Um, so I thought this was an interesting quote, and it was simply start now and accelerate adoption with your team members, as it is a distinct competitive disadvantage if you're not using AI tools or processes. So, I agree with this. I think it is imperative that associations be experimenting at this point with AI to look at certain elements within the operation that are for lack of a better word, a time suck, and are tying up staff. And is it feasible that AI might offer some relief, for some of those operational tasks or to improve operational efficiency? And the final point here, and I think again this is important. Remember, AI is a tool. It's not a replacement for a human. It requires a human touch and fact checking. The human piece needs to remain involved for all AI generated content and activities. And so that kind of touches on the point that we were just, making about using AI to create meeting notes and summaries and things of that nature. So let me address your question, Erin. And again, that was, was there something in the survey that I found, or survey results that I found concerning? Was there anything I found encouraging? And I think, first and foremost, in terms of concerning, I guess a couple of things. We did have, as we saw at the beginning of our presentation here, not a big number, but some associations who, admitted that they're doing absolutely nothing, with AI. And I do think it is important that there be some level of experimentation being, conducted at this point. AI is not going to go away. I mean, the other concern, of course, and we touched on this, not to belabor it, but just this uh, kind of dissonance between policies and guidelines are very important. No, we don't have any policies and guidelines. So I would say, first and foremost is to be thinking of what those policies and guidelines might be. And, that number one includes what member data should we be collecting and uploading to AI. Encouraging, yeah, I think there is uh, encouragement in some of this material. Clearly we are very early days of AI use in the association world. I mean, in a previous presentation I gave, I created or kind of made the illusion of we're dipping our toe in the water. Perhaps we're not even there yet. I mean, maybe we're just getting into our bathing suit. I don't know. And we haven't even started to think about dipping our toe in the water. But I mean, there is evidence that associations, it's not a wholesale turning a blind eye to generative AI. So I mean, there is a fair bit of experimentation going on out there. There are some of the kind of very large associations that we surveyed that have adopted AI wholeheartedly and are making use of all that AI has to offer, not only kind of in terms of operational efficiencies, but also in terms of uh, various strategic initiatives where AI could be of benefit.
Gerald, just before we go to Q&A,
Sure.
obviously, and you've used this phrase yourself, it's very early days at this moment in time. It would be really nice if we could see, this as a benchmark and then later see kind of the same questions for a similar audience and see whether anything's changed. So, do you have any plans to do a similar survey in the future?
Yeah, I think that would be great. I mean, it would be very interesting a year from now, or 18 months from now, to ask at the very least some of the key questions that we asked in this survey to see what's happening. So yeah, this was we started with no information at all about AI usage amongst Canadian associations. So wanted to plant our flag, in the ground and say, here's where we're at right now at this moment in time. And so information of this type really becomes beneficial if it's done over time. And we can start to see, oh, gee, we're making real headway in this area, but we're still really lagging over here. So
Yeah.
that would be, I think, very very interesting. And yes, I will be talking to CSAE, for example, about collaborating once again on doing a survey amongst their members down the road. So
Oh,
absolutely.
and speaking of CSAE, don't they have a discussion thread?
Yes, yeah, very, very important. Thanks for mentioning that, Erin. Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, CSAE, the report that we created around this survey is available at the CSAE bookstore. And secondly, yes, there is an AI thread that has come up in their kind of community groups, which has seen quite a bit of activity. And if attendees today have questions about policies and guidelines and what should be. That information is there related to these questions, and it's a pretty active thread. So there's a fair bit of discussion taking place on that forum, and I would encourage people to go there as a kind of a first stop if you're looking for advice on how we handle a particular issue or related to policies and guidelines.
Yeah, yeah, very good point, Gerald. So Kevin, let's go to Q&A. I know we've got a bunch of questions. Let's get started.
Sorry. So the first question we have is, there's often this tension within associations between association leaders who obviously see the potential benefits of using AI against some hesitation that staff may have for the reasons that you and Erin outlined earlier. So have you seen associations mandate the usage of AI amongst their staff?
Right. Uh, well, that's an interesting question, and whoever posed that question, thank you very much. Um, I would say, first and foremost, I think it's more likely to be the case that staff are kind of leading the charge here, more so than the executives, than the association executives. So in our survey, it's my kind of belief that it's kind of at the mid-level staff positions. These are the folks who are experimenting with AI and perhaps taking this experience up to the senior executives. But having said that, I don't think mandating the use of AI. I have not seen that, and I don't think that's perhaps kind of the best way to go. I think it starts with education, with your staff kind of learning as much as they can about AI and how it might be advantageous to be used within the association. Um, I think you have to acknowledge the fact with your staff that there can be mixed feelings and trepidation and concern. However, having said that, I was quite interested in the survey results insofar as relatively few people made mention of the fact that sort of job dislocation was a concern. That was quite far down the list, and I don't know if it's just because we are in the kind of early days of AI adoption that people just haven't really kind of thought through that. But that doesn't seem to be a widespread concern at this point. I mean, having said that, again, just to kind of recap, I think education is the way to go. Encourage experimentation, acknowledge the fact that people might feel some concerns, uh, recognize different adoption um, kind of ways of being, and that your staff will take to this in different ways. But rather than just kind of saying, okay, you must use AI to do this, I think that's going to end up kind of hitting a wall. Erin, any thoughts on that?
No, I think you've summarized it really well, Gerald. What's our next question, Kevin? Kevin?
You're on
So
mute.
our
There you go.
Sorry about that. So our next question is, how effective is using private servers? I'll use the example of, you know, uh, restricted access sites on SharePoint as a way of mitigating some of the privacy concerns that you and Erin touched upon earlier
Right.
when using something like Copilot.
Okay, good question. And again, I'm going to say to all attendees, I am not an AI expert. And so this is getting into an area where my knowledge is sketchy at best. So I put that out there before saying anything. And it's not an area that we touched on in our survey. I mean, that's our survey was trying to get a comprehensive read on AI usage. So it was quite broad, but it was we didn't dive really deep into some of these areas. Having said all that, yes, I mean, I've heard anecdotally associations talking about creating well, I like the expression, it's a safe sandbox for staff to play in. And that might be, using a separate server or, creating a kind of a chat GPT-like a kind of AI assistant, if you will, that is separated and is not going to be used for training purposes. However, I would say still use all of your kind of due diligence around what you put into that safe sandbox, and who can use it and how it's to be used. So I think that's all of the information I have to say about a particular issue.
Yeah, Gerald,
Hey,
I've found that any research that we've tried to do with the makers of the various platforms, they're very I don't know, deliberately opaque
mhm,
about, how the information is accessed, how it's used. And of course, I mean, you could do all your research now, come to the conclusion that this platform is going to be great, this is the way it works, it's awesome. But that doesn't mean that 6 months from now that it's going to be the same as it was today. So I think, I mean, that's an issue that we've all got to deal with.
right,
And in a way, this problem is already here when you think of a lot of organizations, small associations might be using, Google Drive and Google Documents, for online storage. Well, do we know what the privacy is around that? And, how good is the privacy around something
right,
that is free and is, has a reason for being there and a reason for being offered for free? So I
right.
think there's never going to be any easy answer to that question.
Yeah, again, I would direct people to the AI community on CSAE for a question of this type because you will likely find people who have kind of gone down this avenue and have some ex direct experience with setting this up and what the challenges were and what the advantages were.
These are great questions, Kevin. Do we have another one?
Yes, we've got quite a few actually.
Okay.
So we talked a bit about how associations are using AI, and from what we heard, it seems to be mostly restricted to content creation. But obviously, one area where AI's potential has yet to be unlocked is through tasks such as renewals and other membership administration tasks.
Hmm.
So when associations are looking to use AI tools for membership administrations, what are some things that they should look out for? What are some risks?
Um, okay, again, my I'm answering this based on my very kind of general anecdotal information. It wasn't directly asked in the survey itself. I mean, I would simply say one of the ways in which AI could be used, I think, quite effectively is in the area of member engagement, and it can, uh, member information can be uploaded and so that you as an association can anticipate a member need almost in advance of uh, the member themselves kind of recognizing that they have a need for this piece of content, this recommendation, this introduction to another member. So think of it as being like Amazon. I mean, I think, or Netflix or something. I mean, we're all kind of continuously amazed at, wow, how did Amazon make that book recommendation to me? Well, they know everything you bought and they kind of put two and two together and recommend, gee, you like this book, maybe you would enjoy this book as well. And it's kind of cool. But I mean, my concern is, um, I'll use the technical term, at what point does it get creepy? that the feeling that someone is Big Brother is peering over your shoulder and watching everything that you do. So I mean, I think it's you need to be careful in terms of using AI in this particular capacity, in terms of being able to engage with members in a very direct way because you've been gathering information and you can analyze that information quite efficiently about their likes and their attendance at different events and pages they visited on your website, et cetera, questions they've asked. Um, I think it kind of boils down to being completely transparent with members about how you might be using AI. I may have wandered off the path there, but Erin, any any thoughts?
No, I think you're doing a great job of articulating the concerns. And let's keep in mind, we as association executives are bound by confidentiality legislation, privacy legislation, and these are laws that we're actually bound by. So it not only behooves us to be on top of this, it's a requirement.
Right.
All
What's
right.
next, Kevin?
So the next question is, what are your thoughts on balancing uh, the benefits of using AI with some of the privacy concerns that we've been talking about all podcast?
Well, I think we've been, you know, touching on this. It seems to me that the all of the kind of operational efficiencies that we've kind of discussed, in terms of, for example, content creation and maybe some of the more administrative tasks that AI can help with. Um, I don't see kind of huge privacy concerns in terms of that usage. I think the concerns are more in that strategic usage that just been talking about is the engagement piece where we might be trying to engage with members at a kind of a much higher personalized level. That's where I think we might have kind of real concerns about misuse of personal data, the potential of personal data being, kind of leaked out into training models, et cetera. So, sorry, just to kind of sum up, I think at an operational level, where we're not really dealing with personal data, I think we're on fairly safe ground. But it is some of those other kind of deeper uses of AI where there could be some concerns and comes back to policies and guidelines, having those in place to ensure that we're not uploading information that we shouldn't be uploading.
It occurs to me as you're saying this, Gerald, that we haven't touched on the analytical opportunities, the data mining opportunities
Yeah.
that are there with AI, and
Mhm.
and just leaving aside the confidentiality part of it for the moment. One thing that I've noticed about associations is we're not very good at analyzing the information and the data that we've got and using it for future decisions.
Right.
And given the way that we actually can do that with prompts, going to a database, setting up an Excel spreadsheet without actually having to do all that work ourselves, I would hope that that would be an area where associations can really get some value going forward.
No, I think that's a good point, and you're right. We haven't touched on that, and that is a big kind of opportunity because associations generally are sitting on just a ton of information, and that is not always readily accessible. And so I think being able to, uh, you know, um, kind of tag that information and make it uh, kind of more accessible or scannable or readable or whatever the correct word is a big opportunity. Um, so I mean, I noticed some of the just my own experimentation and looking around are the kind of the chat bots that some learning sites, for example, have created, and the opportunity to ask questions and have a very kind of interactive experience with those chat bots is quite remarkable. Putting just uploading all of this information, given all the potential concerns and that could be attached to that information. But it's a huge opportunity. So
Yeah, definitely. Kevin.
So the next question is, how do you think AI will impact the employment situation in the association sector?
right. Yeah, that's a great question. And as I alluded to a little bit earlier on in the conversation, that at this point doesn't seem to be a huge concern, and that surprised me. I thought that would be much higher up on the list of worries. I think it's a little early to tell. I just don't think we really know how AI over the next few years will impact organizations. It's moving so quickly. It's really quite remarkable. Um, on the kind of positive side, we could say, well, like new roles will be created by the use of AI. We can take someone who is doing a staff member who is doing something that's fairly repetitive and not all that stimulating, and turn that over to AI, and that individual can then be doing something on a more kind of strategic level. So, I mean, I think that's a possibility. I'll tell you the one area where that concerns me. I've sat through some training sessions in the use of AI within market research. And the individual who was putting on this particular course was saying, think of AI as your intern. And, you would give your intern certain tasks to do, and then you would review the material that your intern has put together. Well, that's all very well and good. And you might be using AI within the association arena as an intern. But what about actual interns? Like, that worries me that, young people coming in, wanting to come into the association world may face challenges because AI is doing the work that they would normally be doing. So at what level do they enter into the association kind of workspace if AI is doing all of these more kind of entry level jobs? Anyway, again, I may have wandered off the path here, Erin, but yeah, I think it's a very interesting concern. I don't think we know at this point exactly where it's going to end up.
Thanks, Gerald. And Kevin, I think we have time for a couple more questions. What have we got?
Sure. So I'll just bundle a couple of them then. So how are you seeing associations use AI tools, whether it's something built into Zoom, the AI note-taking applications that we mentioned earlier, or something more sophisticated like a custom GPT
Yeah,
to support their governance activities?
right. So I mean, I'll summarize what I think we've touched on up to this point, and it is by and large at this moment in time, largely those sort of operational efficiencies. So whether that's content creation, meeting summaries like your Zoom and other things, and relatively few have kind of made that leap into what we were talking about earlier on, where someone wants to create a kind of a governance, separate kind of chat function on a server. Relatively few are doing that. So this is why the illusion of dipping our toe in the water is, I think, where we're at, or putting our bathing suits on or whatever, that we're still kind of very early stages of just using AI primarily for uh, certain more kind of mundane tasks. That doesn't sound quite right. Well, simpler tasks of content and operational efficiencies, still exploring, experimenting with the more kind of strategic engagement, retention type opportunities, governance that might exist out there.
Governance, that's a good point, Gerald, because one of the challenges that we all have as association executives is we have to be compliant with our bylaws, we have to be compliant with our policies, we have to be compliant with legislation. And to know every line of every piece of legislation out there and the bylaws and be able to just respond at a board meeting just like that, not that easy to do. And I can see potentially a lot of opportunity there. Legislation is publicly out there. Our bylaws are publicly out there. This is not confidential information. And if we were able to, query at a committee meeting or a board meeting, a tool that could answer that question, would this be in violation of human rights legislation? Or, do our bylaws allow us to create committees without having a motion by the board? Yeah, I mean, we know most of that stuff, but the nuances not necessarily. And I could really see that even if it goes into the large learning model not being a problem and being potentially helpful from a governance
Right,
perspective.
right, right.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to share with us before we move on and wrap up, Gerald?
Well, I think I've shared quite enough.
Okay, well let's talk about our next podcast. I hope you're going to join us on Wednesday, September 17th. For many associations, it's the most wonderful time of the year, renewal season. Join us. We're going to share with you 7 proven techniques to increase your retention rate, to speed up your cash flow, and to sell your member value proposition. Always eligible for 1 CAE credit. Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you next month.